3.1 Lesson Objectives. State the cell theory, and list the discoveries that led to it. Describe the diversity of cell shapes, and explain why cells are so small. Identify the parts that all cells have in common. Contrast prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Vocabulary. Cytoplasm. Eukaryote. Eukaryotic cell. Nucleus. Organelle. Plasma membrane. Prokaryote. Prokaryotic cell. Ribosome. Virus. Introduction. If you look at living matter with a microscope, even a simple light microscope, you will see that it consists of cells. Cells are the basic units of the structure and function of living things. They are the smallest units that can carry out the processes of life. All organisms are made up of one or more cells, and all cells have many of the same structures and carry out the same basic life processes. Knowing the structures of cells and the processes they carry out is necessary to understanding life itself. Discovery of cells. The first time the word cell was used to refer to these tiny units of life was in 1665 by a British scientist named Robert Hooke. Hooke was one of the earliest scientists to study living things under a microscope. The microscopes of his day were not very strong, but Hooke was still able to make an important discovery. When he looked at a thin slice of cork under his microscope, he was surprised to see what looked like a honeycomb. Hooke made a drawing to show what he saw. As you can see, the cork was made up of many tiny units, which Hooke called cells. Leeuwenhoek's discoveries. Soon after Robert Hooke discovered cells in cork, Anton van Leeuwenhoek in Holland made other important discoveries using a microscope. Leeuwenhoek made his own microscope lenses, and he was so good at it that his microscope was more powerful than other microscopes of his day. In fact, Leeuwenhoek's microscope was almost as strong as modern light microscopes. Using his microscope, Leeuwenhoek discovered tiny animals such as rotifers. He also discovered human blood cells and even scraped plaque from his own teeth to observe it under the microscope. He saw tiny living things with a single cell that he named animalcules, tiny animals. Today, we have different names for Leeuwenhoek's animalcules, such as bacteria or protozoa. The cell theory. By the early 1800s, scientists had observed the cells of many different organisms. These observations led two German scientists, named Theodor Schwann and Matthias Jacob Schleiden, to propose that cells are the basic building blocks of all living things. Around 1850, a German doctor named Rudolf Virchow was studying cells under a microscope when he saw them dividing and forming new cells. He realized that living cells produce new cells through division. Based on this realization, Virchow proposed that living cells arise only from other living cells. The ideas of Schwann, Schleiden, and Virchow led to the cell theory, which states that all organisms are made of one or more cells. All the life functions of organisms occur within cells. All cells come from already existing cells. Microscopes. Starting with Robert Hooke in the 1600s, the microscope opened up an amazing new world, the world of life at the level of the cell. As microscopes continued to improve, more discoveries were made about the cells of living things. However, by the late 1800s, light microscopes had reached their limit. Objects much smaller than cells, including the structures inside cells, were too small to be seen with even the strongest light microscope. Then, in the 1950s, a new type of microscope was invented. Called the electron microscope, it used a beam of electrons instead of light to observe extremely small objects. With an electron microscope, scientists could finally see the tiny structures inside cells and even individual molecules and atoms. The electron microscope had a huge impact on biology, leading to the emergence of the field of molecular biology. Diversity of cells. Today, we know that all living cells have certain things in common, such as obtaining and using energy, responding to the environment, and reproducing. Different types of cells even within the same organism may have their own unique functions as well. Cells vary in size and shape, but all cells are very small. If cells have such an important role in living organisms, why are they so small? Cell size. To carry out life processes, a cell must be able to quickly pass substances into and out of the cell. Anything that enters or leaves a cell must cross its outer surface. This need to pass substances across the surface limits how large a cell can be. Cell shape. Cells with different functions often have different shapes. Each type of cell has a shape that helps it do its job. For example, nerve cells have many long extensions to pass messages to other cells, while algae have tail-like projections to help them swim. Parts of a cell. Although cells are diverse, all cells have certain parts in common, including a plasma membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and DNA. The plasma membrane surrounds the cell, cytoplasm contains the cellular material, ribosomes are where proteins are made, and DNA contains genetic instructions. Two types of cells. There are two basic types of cells based on whether they have a nucleus: prokaryotic cells, without a nucleus, and eukaryotic cells, with a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are found in single-celled organisms like bacteria, while eukaryotic cells are larger and found mainly in multicellular organisms. Viruses, prokaryotes or eukaryotes. Viruses are tiny particles that may cause